Man, a tough weekend in Liverpool. Both fights were such a bust in two different ways. Here's how I break it down. So the Cullen Shelley fight, let's get to it. Now we've seen these guys go at it before. It was a dull fight in their first match. This one was no different. Maybe Shelley was a little bit more active. His jabs were landing. He was landing a lot of sharp jabs. He was landing overhand rights, and he was just timing Cullen really well coming in. Cullen just had no answer in this fight. He just couldn't find his distance. He's a tall, rangy guy, but he just couldn't find his range against Shelley, who was controlling the fight with his offense. Like I said, he was throwing those sharp jabs. He was landing those overhand rights whenever Cullen was coming in, and he was smothering Cullen's attack whenever he got in too close. So Shelley was managing this distance a lot better than Cullen was. It was a very sloppy fight, and it was just so hard to watch. 12 rounds of this was feeling like a lifetime. What's next for them? I think Cullen should retire. I don't think he can compete in the world elite level. He's definitely not at that championship level yet. He looked very slow in this fight. He looked very sluggish. He couldn't land anything clean on Shelley. As for Shelley, man, there's a lot of big fights for him. Maybe a fight with Christian and Billy, or maybe he could run a fight with Diego Pacheco. Pacheco knocked the shit out of the Cullen. Maybe Shelley could do a better job. I don't think he will. I think he gets his head knocked off too, but that's a possible matchup to look at. And Shelley's a tough guy, man. I mean, he took some really hard shots from that guy Mark Jeffers, and Mark Jeffers also fought on the card. It was untelevised, but Mark Jeffers is a really tough competitor, and he was taking some hellacious, clean shots from Jeffers. And Shelley does have a chin on him, and he's tough, but he is vulnerable. He isn't very technically sound, and he does get a little sloppy with his punches. Now on to the main event, the Natasha Jonas against the Mikaela Mayer match. And let me tell you, this was hometown cooking. I knew this was a fight that was going to be a close decision. I knew it was going to go to the scorecards. And I knew if Mikaela had to win this fight, she had to make it convincing. And she absolutely made it convincing. But it was a Liverpool decision. There was a lot of back and forth, competitive rounds throughout the first half of the fight. I want to say between rounds 1 through 6, very competitive. Mikaela was winning some rounds, at least in the first part of the half. After that 6th round, she completely took over. And Jonas started off well, actually. She was countering Mayer, who was having a hard time finding her range at the time in those first few rounds. So Jonas was taking advantage and countering. She was digging to the body. She was landing the straight left hand. Sometimes she was mixing in the occasional check hook, and she was doing this really nice step back jab that was working for her. She was landing some clean shots on Mikaela. And they were both giving as much as they were getting in this fight. And yeah, Jonas was moving effectively to her right. She was ducking under a lot of hooks that Mikaela was throwing at her. She was pivoting. She was getting hit, but she was backpedaling, and she was setting up traps in those first few rounds. But after that 6th round, though, I had Mikaela taking over this fight completely. She was landing more straight right hands, and they were pushing Jonas's head back. They were popping her head back, and she was getting pushed in the corner every single time. Mikaela was walking her girl down, jabbing her, hitting her with the straight right, mixing in some body shots of her own. Her punch output was high, and that was a big difference in this later part of the fight. I think all the damage that Natasha was taking was starting to take a toll on her around the 7th and 8th round. She was slowing down. She was throwing back shots that didn't have enough mustard on them. And Mikaela basically closed the ground on her. What's next for Natasha? Like I said before, this was a great performance by Mikaela Mayer, but she was just a victim of some hometown cooking. And maybe she should just stay away from England. She's been fighting there a lot. Maybe she should take a break, take a couple fights and fight in the States, and then chase that bag another day. What's next for Natasha Jonas? I see a unification match with Sandy Ryan or Jessica McCaskill. I think either of those two. I think either Sandy or Jessica not only give Natasha a hard fight, but I do think they beat her more convincingly. And remember, Natasha is only getting older. She's getting closer to 40. And though she did show us that she had a little something left in her tank, you could see where she's vulnerable at. And I can see Sandy Ryan or Jessica McCaskill taking a page out of Mikaela Mayer's book in this fight and possibly winning that match whenever they meet down the road. What's next for Mayer? I mean, she can move up in weight. I think Mikaela can move up in weight and give Terry Harper or even Emma Kozin a tough fight. Any of those two fights could be for championship belts. So I don't think Mikaela has anything to be disappointed about today. I think she did a great job. This was a great performance.